Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF. Oh, I've got some amazing news for our Legal AFR audience. You know him, you respect him, and I'm sure you've learned from him. And you probably have reposted things that he's done. He is a legal journalist. I certainly have learned a lot from Adam Klasfeld of All Rise News, and this is exciting. Adam, All Rise News, is going to be on Legal AF for regular commentary and contributions, and it starts today. I mean, I literally just got a chill down my spine. I thought it was the air conditioning in the hotel room. No, it's because Adam is here. Let's bring Adam on. Adam, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Well, of course, I've been reading your work. So has our audience. I use it as an input for a lot of the things that I do, always have. And just so people know, the commentary that you do is so unique because, first of all, for those that don't recognize you, you've been on Morning Joe covering all the Trump trials. You've been with Court News, and you have a very interesting competitive advantage. You're either in the courtrooms if you can get in, if it's that important, oral arguments and trials, or you're following the transcripts closely, and you always pick up something. I mean, I try to do the same thing, but not at the level that you're able to do it because you're so immersed in the court process and in real-time reporting that it's invaluable. It's been invaluable to the Midas Touch Network, the work I do with Ben on Legal AF. It's been invaluable for my own commentary. You're one of the leading inputs I've always had. And so when Ben and I were talking about getting Adam in front of the Legal AF audience on a regular basis on YouTube, we're like, this is a no-brainer. So, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Let's just go right to the source. Adam, what do you want to brief our audience on today?
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for that. That's a wonderful, kind introduction. I think I'll start with one topic that I've been covering for a very long time, which is the Jeffrey Epstein case, Ghislaine Maxwell case. I was in the courts throughout all of that. I remember the day of Jeffrey Epstein's indictment, that the press conference where the U.S. attorney had the Q&A. I asked, is Jeffrey Epstein a billionaire? And the response from then U.S. attorney Jeffrey Berman was no comment. Now, Jeffrey Epstein's financial trail is a big source of congressional investigation. And one of the things that I like to do, because, I worked for some time with the great Lawrence O'Donnell. He always factors in the human stories. He's always has a very sharp eye on that. And so yesterday was a very significant day in the Jeffrey Epstein story for the survivors, because they were given a forum by a federal judge who invited them to file letters to the court. And there were 4 separate letters, 2 of them from lawyers who represent hundreds of victims, and they're furious. One of the things you talk about close reading of the documents, I say always read the footnotes. Mm-hmm. And there's a footnote in the letter from Sigrid McCauley, who represents Annie Farmer, the Epstein survivor whose testimony helped put Ghislaine Maxwell in prison. It helped lead to her conviction, delivered really brutal testimony at that trial. And in the footnote of Farmer's attorney's letter, she goes out of the way to denounce the cozying up to Ghislaine Maxwell, says that she doesn't deserve any leniency, that the victims are watching that with horror. But most of these letters are about the grand jury filings. And in letter after letter, we're seeing outrage from the victims and from the victims' attorneys that they have been iced out of the process, that the Trump administration has been making, in their words, critical decisions about this case and leaving them out of it. And to me, my memory of this case goes back to sort of the original sin of this all, which is the 2008-2007 sweetheart deal with Alex Acosta, Trump's former Secretary of Labor, but then U.S. attorney, who signed off on the slap on the wrist deal for Jeffrey Epstein. And one of the attorneys who filed one of these letters, Brad Edwards, noted that back then that they proceeded in violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, and that he litigated that the victims, the survivors, deserved a chance to be heard, and they didn't. And what he is saying in his letter is that this is history repeating itself. So there's a lot going on the Epstein docket, and of course, a lot going on in Congress too.
Well, thanks, Adam. I mean, again, such insightful. Who else out there is doing legal commentary from having been in the room during the trial in front of Judge Nathan and the jurors there, and to just bring our audience up to speed, because sometimes they're not exactly where we are. We talk a little bit in shorthand. Donald Trump's trying to redefine what is the Epstein files. It's not working. He tried to redefine it as grand jury transcripts instead of the truckload and gigabytes of information that now, and we'll talk a little bit about it next, the Congress is trying to get their hands on, as are the Democrats. But to try to feed the beast and try to get this Pandora back in the box, he said, well, I'll authorize the release of the grand jury transcripts, but you got to go through judges and you got to go through federal criminal law and federal criminal rules of procedure. And it's very difficult to get grand jury transcripts because of the secrecy that's given to grand jurors and the grand jury process. So one judge in Florida, Judge Rosenberg, about things related to the first grand jury against Epstein, already said, the federal rule of criminal procedure 6E does not allow me to do a release of the grand jury transcript. So good day. Two other judges that we're now talking about, one Judge Engelmeyer and the other judge who's handling, Engelmeyer is for
Ghislaine
Maxwell. He took over for Judge Nathan when she got elevated, and the other judge whose name escapes me, but you probably know, is both simultaneously issued orders almost identical. With, I want to hear from Maxwell, which we're like, that's interesting because she's still got an appeal running, and I want to help, and we want to hear from the victims.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, that's a absolutely terrific point. I was going to say that the other judge, Judge Richard Berman, he presided over the Epstein case before Epstein's death, and he has a real focus on the victims because this is an interesting fact about him. He's a licensed clinical social worker. So when he's looking at this through the prism of trauma. So the Trump administration, they're going through these political machinations, right? You have the political appointees. None of the line prosecutors behind any of these cases have been involved in any of this, trying to unseal the grand jury records. They haven't, so far as I know, participated in anything that happened in Florida. I don't know if anyone asked Ghislaine Maxwell a question other than Todd Blanche, Trump's former attorney. But perhaps we'll find out if they release this transcript.
Oh, we're going to find out.
Yeah. This is what they're now claiming. We'll see. Yeah. 2 weeks from now, right?
Yeah, it's always 2 weeks.
Always 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No, you were saying?
No, on the Ghislaine Maxwell thing. So she, of course, we're looking at the victims, which, have been completely put to the sidelines because to take it from Trump's perspective, we have a judge sex abuser that needs to have a convicted child sex trafficker vouch for him. That's how low this has sunk. He has to be exonerated by a convicted child sex offender. And I just did a hot take recently that'll go up later today about those recordings of that 12 hours of testimony. They're coming out because I am sure she'll say anything to get out of jail. And I'm sure it's a version of, this is my reporting, I'm sure it's a version of, Donald Trump did not know about Jeffrey Epstein's pedophilia. Donald Trump was not with girls. Donald Trump was not on the island. I never saw Donald Trump do anything untoward. I never saw Donald Trump attack women. It'll be some version of that. And so she, of course, does not want anything to come out about her deeds as her lawyer, David Marcus, tries to run this narrative in front of the public that she's some sort of scapegoat or victim, which is what he called her in a filing that he just did. Jeffrey Epstein's dead and Ghislaine Maxwell's not. Thanks, David. No truer words have ever been spoken. But they need to hide from the public all of her convicted sexual crimes so that gives Donald Trump cover to be able to ultimately pardon her once he says, well, it's a legal issue and it's so confusing. It's up at the Supreme Court and James Comey's daughter, deep state, prosecuted her and I'm troubled by that. And she was very honorable in talking to my lawyer and therefore pardon. I mean, come on, Adam. What do you think?
Right. Right. I mean, just think about the backdrop of what we're talking today. There's reportedly going to be a strategy session between the White House and the DOJ about how the public discussion of Epstein. Excuse me, a strategy session between the White House and the Justice Department? Imagine there was a Jack Smith strategy session between the White House, Merrick Garland, Biden, they're all in a room. That's the kind of fantasy that Trump's defense attorneys were spinning without any evidence. And now the Trump administration is doing it openly. They are openly, sources are telling the press there's going to be a strategy session. Here's who's involved. And by the way, Dan Bongino is not involved. A really interesting omission there. The fact that they are causing so much outrage and consternation to the victims, however, is a real, I think, fly in the ointment of what they are trying to do. If they have these kind of choreographed, disclosures from a woman who was charged with perjury, was only not prosecuted with perjury because she was convicted of sex trafficking, and the prosecutors didn't want to put the victims through additional trauma of a second trial, who the judge and the prosecutors say repeatedly lied under oath. Well, they're going to, trot her out, treat her as a credible source of investigation without showing the actual investigative files they've been looking at. Now, that relies on credibility, and it's hard to have credibility when the victims are calling you out. And minutes before our conversation today, the family of Virginia Giuffre, her siblings came out with another statement, and they've been delivering scorching statement after scorching statement about what the administration is doing. They denounced Ghislaine Maxwell's transfer to the cushiest federal prison that the United States has to offer in Texas, saying that she doesn't deserve that leniency. And, according to many, many reports, they waived her sex offender status in order to get her there because they had to. There was no way otherwise.
Bureau of Prisons doesn't move sex offenders into the lowest security camps, luxury camps that they have in the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's a dynamic to look out for, because the victims are not being shy about their views. And I have not seen a single survivor come out and say, yeah, we're happy with the way the Trump administration is handling this. Because
I'm so glad that you're focusing on, and you're reporting here on the victims, because Donald Trump has to ignore the victims in order to pull off what is some sort of political resurrection, having been involved with a cover-up related to his best friend and sex crimes, two best friends and sex crimes. So you have to sideline the victims. You have to rewrite history, and you have to do what as a litigator in a court, you have to use the empty chair. When there's an empty chair in the room, and you're a defendant, you try to dump on the empty chair. And the empty chair, for liability purposes and criminal liability purposes, the empty chair here is the dead Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein did it all. It's all Jeffrey Epstein. I was a victim. She's going to retry the case. She never took the stand, though, in her defense.
No, she didn't.
Right.
It's interesting. So much of the rehabilitation, and it's going on right now, rehabilitation of Ghislaine Maxwell, depends on absolutely forgetting what happened in that courtroom. And I don't forget what happened in that courtroom because I sat through every day of that trial, and some of that testimony was absolutely wrenching. And so to remind people that, she's calling herself the scapegoat for Jeffrey Epstein, that's what her attorney is saying. Now, survivor after survivor, as on the witness stand, came out and said that she participated in the sexual abuse. And during the closing arguments, the prosecutor said of Epstein and Maxwell, they molested kids together. That's what the trial evidence shows. That's a sort of thing that when on Newsmax they come out with a broadcast and said, oh, she was friends with Epstein and that's bad, I guess.
She's a victim.
Yes. This rehabilitation only washes if you're not scrutinizing the evidence that came out that has long been available. It's about reshifting attention and, as you noted, excluding the voices of the victims.
Yeah, look, this is a great kickoff hot take for you and All Rise News joining Legal AF, because I think our audience who has probably been reading you for years hasn't maybe had the opportunity to watch you and see you in action. And I think what our audience is learning is look at the competitive, I'll compliment you. Look at the competitive advantage you bring to Legal AF. You've got your own sources, exclusive sources. You break news. We just heard a couple of things here about Epstein that I hadn't heard before, including this meeting between the White House, the Department of Justice to coordinate strategy about a convicted sex trafficker and how she can help the president get out of his mess. That's the kind of stuff. And from the perspective of being in the courtroom, so many talking heads, legal commentators are either not current or former practicing trial lawyers who have been in the rooms or haven't been in the rooms. And it's their commentary, I'm not going to crap all over on other people, but it's iterative and you know what it's like to be in the courtroom and what you pick up when you have that kind of fighter pilot vision and you're watching everything in the room, from the court personnel to the judge to the jury to the people in the witnesses, the defense and prosecution table, the people that are in the room watching, and you see that dynamic, and it's just something you can't explain it unless you're there, and you pick up so much from being in the courtroom, and that's what you're going to bring to Legal AF when you do your commentary for All Rise News. Tell our audience about, Adam, as we end this hot take together, tell our audience about the different ways that they can follow and support you, in addition to watching your videos now on Legal AF.
Thank you so much. Well, they can find my reporting on All Rise News. That's www.allrisenews.com. It's on Substack. You can subscribe. And if you are a paid subscriber, you help bring me to the courts all around the country and sustain that coverage. You'll unlock full access. Most of our content is free, so you can subscribe, see how you like the reporting, and if you feel like sustaining and supporting my work, be very much appreciative of that. I'll be covering cases, the most significant cases in the country, including the one that we talked about today, the Epstein and Maxwell case, and including the Epstein and Maxwell case, the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I've reported live from Nashville, will continue to, and many others, wherever it's happening across the country. Next week, there's a big trial in California, the Posse Comitatus Act, whether the Trump administration violated it by sending in the troops to Los Angeles. I'll be covering that remotely. So you'll follow the latest news if you subscribe here. And of course, I'll be talking about that right here on the Legal AF channel.
That's fantastic. And take a moment, hit the free subscribe button for Legal AF as well. Great news, everybody. I'm sure you'll agree. Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, joins Legal AF for regular commentary and videos you can only find here. Adam, until our next time together.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.